Welcome to the North Shore Performance Podcast, where we take a deep dive into health and fitness for everyday people and the athlete in all of us. I am your host, Jake Wirtz, and with me is my best friend and co-host, Tanner Schenkel. Together, we take an honest look at fitness and discuss how anybody can improve their lives by adopting a healthy lifestyle. Welcome back to another edition of the North Shore Performance Podcast. My co-host Tanner Schenkel is not paying attention, and today we have another great episode for you. Yes, today we have the leg draft. We're going to be drafting all of our favorite leg exercises and see which one of us can build the better workout. Tanner, are you excited for this draft?
Yeah, because I think we're going to find out that Wirtz actually does skip leg day because his draft is going to be inferior to mine, and it's really going to show because he just lacks the experience of building a solid leg day.
My first leg exercise, standing bicep curl, bench press, shoulder press. Yeah, I think Tanner's about to learn that there's a lot of things you can do in the gym besides having a squat rack and a barbell. That's all he can do in his garage gym. But, he can't pick squat for every lift, but we'll see. So, Tanner, who did we decide was going to have the first pick today?
I think you decided you're going to go.
All right. And so with the first pick in the leg draft with the 101, I'm going to take the king, the barbell back squat. This is the easy 101. This is the most effective and probably my favorite leg exercise. Everybody jokes about how squats are hard, and if you don't do them, you're a pansy. And I agree with that for the most part, basically. And there's different progressions to it. Obviously, you don't have to squat with a bar, but I think you should have that as a goal to work towards if you can't squat with a bar. It's easy to load. You get the most bang for your buck. It's a heavy compound exercise like we're always talking about. And pretty much every leg workout that I do starts with a squat.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of a leg day, if there's not a squat involved in your leg day, you probably train at like Planet Fitness or something. Caleb Lenz, and that's not a real leg day if the squat's not involved. So just throwing it out there.
Also, it's not a real back squat if it's on a Smith machine. I'm just going to say that.
That's just straight garbage.
That has value. I'm not going to say it has no value, but it's not a back squat. It's more of like it's closer to a hack squat at that point. But yeah, I digress.
Yep, that's fair. All right. That's exactly where I thought you would be going. And if I was the 101, that's what I would take. Like that's a certified 101 pick right there. But I also like to start all my leg days with a squat movement, and I'm going to go with the front squat.
I knew you were going to do that too. That's a good pick.
Yeah, I've been a fan of front squats. I kind of do them on my non-program day. So just kind of add some different, I don't know, you can't really shock the muscle, but it just adds a different element to it. Try to create some different adaptations. So, but my next pick, I'm kind of glad that Wirtz volunteered to go first because it allows me to go take another OG lift off the board because he obviously got a barbell squat, and I'm going to go with the deadlift. So I like to formulate all my leg days with like a squat, a hinge, and then some kind of like single leg movement. And then you try to get your lower legs involved in some way. And then I kind of add stuff as I go from there. So this deadlift gives me my hinge off the board, and I think it's probably one of my favorite hinge movements. You can probably go with some other lifts that are more of a true like hamstring lift,
more of a hamstring dominant lift.
Yeah, but I kind of like adding the deadlift where the front squat is more quad dominant. Now, if I went the 101 and took back squat, I would probably do more of a quad or a hamstring dominant lift. But the front squat is so quad dominant that I feel like just the deadlift will kind of all encompass my legs in this aspect.
So both your picks kind of raise interesting discussions I want to ask you about. Can you explain what you think the mechanical difference is between a front squat and a back squat? And then a follow-up question, what do you think the benefits versus detraction is from doing a front squat versus a back squat?
I feel like in a back squat, because of the leverage point where you have the bar, you it's going to be different as far as on your eccentric motion. I feel like you can almost like obviously when you squat, you're going to use your hamstrings to slow you down and your butt slow you down too. But I feel it much more in the back squat because of where you have the barbell on your back. It's putting you the leverage point is farther back. Like if you think of your body as a fulcrum, it's farther back on that leverage or that lever. So I feel like I feel more of my posterior chain with a back squat. Whereas a front squat, I don't really feel any secondary leg movements. It's very quad dominant in my opinion compared to a back squat. Where the back squat I feel it hits all the legs, where your front squat is like your quads kind of just take over in general. Like I don't even feel like my glutes involved that much on a front squat.
And that's probably mostly due to the fact that because of where the bar is, you have to be more vertical with your spine.
Yep.
A back squat, like you said, you're more of on a fulcrum. You push your butt back, you try to cut down the distance almost especially with like a low bar squat. But yeah, with that front bar squat, with where the bar is positioned, you can't really do that mechanically. It's not logistically possible, really. So you have to stay really upright, and that does force like more of the tension on your quads and stuff. I find the front squat to be a very difficult lift unless you've practiced it a lot, to be honest. And it can put a little strain on your back if you're not used to that kind of posture. But I think it's a great accessory movement for building your squat up for sure, because it teaches you how to squat from different leverages and different advantages and disadvantages and stuff.
Another thing that I like, if you only really do a back squat, I feel like your hip flexors get a little weak, because based on where you put the bar, the leverage point, your hip flexors they fire, don't get me wrong, but they don't fire as much as they do on a front squat. Like I really feel my hip flexors firing when I do a front squat. And I think it's all based on where you're putting that weight versus being on your back. It's on your front where your hip flexors are on the anterior side of your body. They're going to be engaged much more, I think, during the lift. At least that's how I feel. I'm not sure if you hook up one of those machines that sense muscle, whatever pulses. I don't know if that's the right term, but I don't know if that'll be true. But a lot of times in lifting, you just kind of go how you feel. Sometimes you overthink it when you get the science involved.
Also, another question. Do you feel like it's kind of cheating putting a deadlift on your leg workouts when you don't even do your deadlift on your leg workouts?
There's been multiple lifts that we picked during our draft days that I don't do on a normal basis. Like we talk how many times that we don't do just a chest workout.
Okay, but what I'm saying is, do you think it's better to program deadlift on a back day or deadlift day? And I go back and forth on this personally. I'm not trying to get you. This is more of a genuine question.
I think it depends on the person. Me personally, I get pretty taxed especially during deadlifts. I feel like deadlifts I can push myself more because you don't necessarily need a spotter, so I can really like push the intensity. Where when I lift alone in the garage, I have like with bench and squat, I don't have a spotter, so I can't really push the intensity anymore, and I really tax myself during deadlift days. So I like to do them even a day in between before I do leg day. So I do my first movement of the week is my pull day because that's when I do my deadlifts. But I still think like the fact that I feel taxed into my leg day because I used to do them back-to-back days shows that they're still qualified for a leg day movement.
Yeah, traditionally I've always done my deadlift on my leg day. So I'm giving you a hard time, but I've actually mostly done deadlifts after squats. And I think the reason why, and my dad always kind of talked about this too, he kind of made the point like, well, if you're always deadlifting when you're tired, then you kind of always in the back of your head know like you got a little bit more in the tank if you're fresh, and if you go into a meet or something, you're always squatting before you're deadlifting. You have the bench in between for sure, but the deadlift is almost always the last thing you do. And so I always kind of had that in the back of my head where it's like, I'm tired going into it, but that's just going to make me stronger. I know that doesn't make any sense because technically, if you lift more volume, that's going to be better for your, strength gains from that perspective. But there was always just something that like little mental trick, like if I go into it pre-fatigued and I can still put in a great effort, then that's just going to mean even more gains. So,
yeah, I think part of that too is just that mental mindset. Like I think we talked a couple weeks ago, like I hit like a deadlift rep range that at first I thought I was only going to go for 2 and I kind of pushed it farther. And I realized like there's a mental barrier a lot of the time too. Like you can grind out some lifts. And I think maybe comes into a little bit like, yeah, you're training you might not get the most adaptation out of your deadlift because you're tired and taxed, but you get more of that mental adaptation, which if you're a power lifter, that's huge because you're already pretty taxed going into the final lifts. Or just in general, like just being an athlete, you got to work, still be at your best, even if you're taxed. So, you're kind of training the mindset just as much as you're training your muscles.
Yeah. Well, we got derailed a little bit there, but I thought that was worth a quick discussion. All right, with my next pick, so I went with the squat first of all. I'm going to go back to back hamstring exercises because I feel like these are my two favorite hamstring exercises. Tanner talked about having a hinge in your workout. I completely agree with that. I'm going to go a little bit different route with the hinge, and I'm going to take the barbell good mornings. So it's different from your deadlift or your Romanian deadlift where you're hinging and you have the weight in front of you. The weight is on your back, just like a squat, and you're hinging that way. If you see people doing this in the gym and you've never done a good morning, you might be like, that looks like a broken squat. It's not. It's its own thing. And I would really encourage people to give that a chance. Try to keep it light to start, obviously, until you get the form down. But this will really help develop your posterior chain. It'll really help develop your glutes, your hamstrings. And this was something, too, going into the meet that we did last October, I guess 2 Octobers ago now. After the meet, it was brought up to, by my dad that, hey, we probably should have done more good mornings because your sticking point in your squat was always like you'd kind of lean too far forward and you'd lose your groove. Well, a good morning is going to help you with that. It's going to help you kind of keep your spine in that right posture and stuff like that. You kind of get used to having to push your hips through and stuff like that. So I'm going to go with the good mornings with my second pick. And my third pick, we're going to go back-to-back hamstring killers. Because hamstrings are almost always the biggest weak point for guys on their legs, especially when it comes to their strength gains. I'm going to go with the glute ham raise. So this, you do need a glute ham raise machine, or not machine, but like I don't know what it's called. I think it's a machine. But you basically put your feet in it and you extend your legs out so you're hanging off over the pad, and you use your hamstrings to curl your body weight back up. And then you extend your legs and go back down, putting all that stress, all that elasticity on your hamstrings. And you just curl yourself up with your hamstrings. Those two things, if you only did those two exercises for your hamstrings, you would have killer hamstrings. You would be very strong in your posterior chain. And again, I think that's the biggest weak point that most guys have in their lower body lifts.
Yeah, I agree that those two, I can't do those glute ham raises. Like they're
hard.
Nuts. Yeah, they're
hard, especially if you're heavier. It's if you have some body weight to you, they're extremely difficult.
Yep. Those are the same thing. Like you see those guys do like those Nordic hamstring curls, like where essentially it's the same concept. You just pull yourself
up.
Same
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are nuts. Like I would have to do them band assisted. And even then I struggle with them.
Well, did you see Juji Mufu? He trained with Dave Tate.
Yeah.
And Tate tried to have him do a glute ham raise and he couldn't do it.
Yeah. That dude's also like
that dude
250.
Yeah. And he's one of the most jacked guys on the planet again, but that just shows like it's a lift. If you're on the heavier side, it's going to be really difficult. It makes it even more impressive if you're proficient at them, in my opinion.
Yep. Those are super good hamstring picks. Where I'm going to go, however, we're going to go with something a little funky. I call them the man maker. Like these things are pretty brutal, and it's going to be the Bulgarian split squats.
Ooh.
Yeah, when you see that on a program, like anyone is just going to wince because they know they suck. But after like you do a set of them, like you feel better because you're like, well, at least the worst part of my workout's over. But man, that like, cause you're balancing since you're in like a lunge position, but usually have a foot up on like a bench or some kind of thing to keep your foot in the air. And you're essentially doing a lunge, and man, it torches everything about your legs, your quads, obviously, cause it's kind of a more of a quad dominant position, but you're also hitting your glutes, your hamstring, just everything. You're hitting your hip flexors cause you're trying to balance. Like it torches your legs. You don't need to do a lot of weight, and you're going to feel it. It's probably one of my least favorite exercises that I make sure I program every single time, but I think it's one of the most
I hear
beneficial.
that.
So
I hear that.
yeah,
Ugh.
it's like a hate relationship with me and Bulgarian split squats.
Yeah,
Um,
I get it. They're super effective. But yeah, every time I try to program those for myself, I end up cursing myself later in that workout. I'm like, anything else? I could have done anything else. But the things that suck the worst are usually the things that are the best for you.
yep, that's fair. It's a character builder.
Mm.
Like I said, they make a man out of you. That is for sure. My
Is that
next
a
one,
is that a Mulan reference?
that's a Mulan
A
reference.
big time Mulan reference. To anybody who had that on the bingo card, you win.
That's like 35 on black and roulette.
Okay. If you know, you know.
If you know, you know. My next one after that, we're gonna go. Uh, I had a kind of a planned out. I didn't think you were gonna. This was still gonna be in the board. I'm gonna go with Romanian deadlift. So this is still technically a deadlift, but essentially you're kind of going, letting the bar go down, following like the path in the knee until you feel the stretch in your hamstring, and then you're gonna drive your hips back up through the lift. It's kind of like a halfway deadlift in a way. Mainly focusing on your hamstrings. Um, this is probably one of my most common this or straight legged deadlifts that I do for like a leg day to hit the hamstrings. Um, Romanian deadlift, I feel like just it doesn't hit the lower back as much as like a straight legged deadlift does. Um, but so it's probably most common programmed hamstring movement that I do in my garage gym.
That's probably the hamstring lift I do the most too. I think it's the easiest on my back. It is something you can kind of do anywhere. You don't need a ton of equipment. You just need a couple of dumbbells. I prefer doing it with dumbbells. I don't know about you. I feel like I get a better stretch and I put less stress on my back when I do that. And I'm usually
Yep.
doing these after squats, so I'm trying to take it easy on my lower back when I'm doing these. But yeah, I really like that stretch you get at the bottom. You push your hips back. Some people, a good tip for people who have a hard time feeling that stretch in their hamstrings, put your toes up onto something a little elevated, like a plate, like a 10-pound plate. That little bit of angle with your heel lower than your toes, that'll help put a lot of extra stretch on your hamstrings. And again, that's a great exercise. That's the one I do the most from hamstrings. I just chose to go a different option. But those are two very solid picks. So with my last two picks, I'm kind of in a quarry because there's a lot of things on the board that I still want to pick, but I only have two picks. I feel like 5 rounds isn't enough for this draft.
Yeah, I honestly, it really isn't. Like, because I have a lot of picks here that realistically, like, I probably should have done like 8 rounds because that's like
Yeah.
how many movements kind of you're probably gonna do. But
We're going to stick
hindsight.
to our top five.
Hmm.
We'll have some honorable mentions after the fact, I'm sure. So I'm kind of going for with these last two exercises because I've got my squat, my good morning, and my glute ham raise. So I've really hammered my posterior chain. I'm feeling like I need to focus a little bit more on my quads at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and pick something that's it's another one of those man makers. It's something that it sucks to do and it's hard on the knees, but if you get a sick pump from it. So we're going to go with the sissy squat. Sissy squat is another machine assisted exercise, or not machine, but you have to have the right equipment to do it. And you put your feet in place. There's like a pad right behind your knee, your calves, and you basically just lean back, and you're all the stress is on your knees, and then you use your quads and you flex yourself back up, and from that bottom position from a squat. It's really hard to describe. Maybe Tanner will have a better way to describe it, but if you Google the sissy squat and you've ever done sissy squats, they're extremely difficult. You can do it with your body weight. A lot of guys, that's more than enough, especially if you're a heavier guy again. And yeah, this will really help develop your quads. And yeah, I really feel like that's kind of what I needed. I wanted some quads to balance out my hamstring exercises. And with my last pick, we're going to target our calves because you have to finish out with calves. Don't want to be part of that no calf gang. And I think my favorite calf exercise is still the donkey calf raise machine. Not a lot of gyms have it, I'll admit. There's a great gym in Monticello, 24/7 gym. They have a ton of sweet equipment, a unique equipment. It's kind of a powerlifting gym. But this donkey calf raise machine, basically, you lean over on a pad in front of you, kind of like if you're doing a leg curl, except behind you, there's a pad that sits on top of kind of your lower back, your butt area, and that's where the weight comes down. And your feet are on a bar, basically, and you just do calf raises like that. And based off of where the weight is loaded, you can hammer out a lot of weight with this, and you get a really great stretch at the bottom. There's a lot of great calf exercises. You don't need anything fancy to hit calves, honestly, but that's just my favorite. So I'm gonna go with the donkey calf raise.
I respect it. I respect it. My last pick, I agree with hitting the lower leg, but I'm going to do a different route, and I'm going to target the tibialis, and I'm going to do tibialis raises because
chicks dig big tibs,
and there it is, and that is
There
the
it
reason
is.
why. The tibialises are, if some would say, the forgotten muscle of the leg. And let's be honest, like you get big biceps curls for the girls, you do tibs for the girls. So just a cheat code. If you can't grow your calves, grow your tibs. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and the great thing about tibs is it really gives if you work on it, it really gives the lower part of your legs a great look to them because you're developing the front part of that calf area. It's on the shin side. So if you build that out wide, it really kind of, like you said, it makes your calves look quite a bit bigger. And that's when you wear shorts in the winter because you just want to show off them tibs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Also,
right.
tib raises, if you ever have shin splints from running or walking, work on your tibs. If you start doing tibialis raises, tib curls, all those sorts of things, you really develop some good strength. You will see a massive reduction in your shin splints. Didn't know that when I was playing football. I wish somebody would have told me that because shin splints were the bane of my existence. But here we are. We made it.
Always learning.
So Tanner, why don't you recap your draft?
So
that was your last pick.
Yep. We started off with front squat. Then we're going to hit deadlift. Then Bulgarian split squats. Going to hit the hamstrings again with Romanian deadlift. And then we're going to wrap everything up with tibialis raises.
And I had the back squat into the good mornings, glute ham raises. And then we did some sissy squats and finished up with some donkey calf raises. So those are our drafts. I feel really good about my workout. I know Tanner feels good about his. What are some honorable mentions? What are some things that you really wanted to throw on there, but we limited to ourselves to our top 5?
A couple. I have a banded reverse squat. So for those that don't know and don't follow like the knees over toes guys, that's where you take like a band, attach it to a squat rack, and essentially you're doing the reverse of the eccentric movement. So you're like pulling your knee towards your chest, and it works on your hip flexors. I like to add those. My hips usually get pretty tight after a leg day, and I feel like that kind of helps loosen up, getting my hip flexors stronger. I also have barbell calf raises. I like to do them in my gym. I have one of those wedges so I can stand on, put it in incline, not ecline. And
I was going to let that slide.
And I just will hit them there. I also have like a pistol squat. So kind of like just a single leg, you balance like a crane and do a squat, or some of the other ones I have.
Those are great. One of the ones that I really wanted to throw on there, and I do this quite a bit to finish up a leg workout, is like sled. You push, pull. That's such a great way to finish it. You push the sled all the way down, and then you turn around and you pull it back. You throw the strap on your chest and you just pull it back, or you can walk backwards. It's a great way to develop your posterior chain again, really develop your leg drive, some explosion. If you want to try to pick up the pace, you can go a little bit faster and build up some explosion. And the nice thing about it with the sled is you don't have the same stress on your knees because you don't have that same like eccentric part like you do in a squat. because as you go down, you put all that stress kind of on your knees and stuff. But with a sled, you just take another step. There's no eccentric really. So you only get the concentric, and a lot of times at the end of your workout, you're already pretty wore out. So you can kind of pace yourself, and it's a great way to finish out a workout. Another one that I really like to finish up with, kind of similar, is like the lunge. You talked about Bulgarian split squats. You just do some body weight lunges, or you do some loaded lunges just across the gym. You're like, okay, I'm going to hit 10 strides each leg. I'm going to do that like 5 times. You've essentially done at that point like 50 one-legged squats. You've done 50 lunges each leg. And that's just like the Bulgarian split squat. It's a great way to develop your quads and your balance as well. That's something we don't talk about a lot in the strength space, I feel like, the balance aspect of things, but that's a really important part of this as well, as your coordination. So those are a couple of honorable mentions for me.
Yeah. I liked how you talked about the balance thing too, because that's like, obviously everyone wants to lift, get big, get strong, but also we got to think like longevity down the road too. That balance part is a super big, kind of not thought about when you think about like trying to stay independent as long as you can as you age and get older. One of the leading causes of people getting put in nursing home is they obviously can't walk by themselves, or they can't support themselves, and they tend to fall a lot, like fall risk people. So like having a good coordinated balance, and obviously having good strong legs, good strong base foundation will help you stay longer. So if you don't want to get locked in the nursing home for your kids, follow our leg day plan. Guaranteed results.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting conversation, and I don't know if we want to get too deep into it on this podcast. Maybe we do another podcast about like longevity and things like that. But it's really interesting that some of the lead indicators for all-cause mortality is like your grip strength and your balance.
Yep.
The worse your grip strength is, the higher your all-cause mortality rate becomes. And it's kind of the same relationship, like you said, with balance. And it makes sense. You don't consider those things to be really critical, but if you're an elderly person and you live on your own, your ability to hang on to things, that's a big deal. Hang on to a railing, or for some reason you decide to climb a ladder or something like that. It's like, if you don't have balance, if you don't have enough coordination or upper body strength to hold yourself into place, you can get yourself in a dicey situation, and then you ain't got nobody to help you because you're all alone. So, but that's a conversation for another day. Guys, let us know who had the better draft. We had a lot of fun with this one. I think there's a lot of good conversations, and we have some exciting things coming up down the pike. Tanner and I, do you want to announce the next series that we're going to start?
Oh, we're doing like Bro Science Book Club.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick a book, kind of either around lifting or self-help, something like that. And then we're going to do an episode breaking down a chunk of the book as we go. Eventually, we'll obviously cover the whole book. But yeah, that's the next series. We're kind of excited about it. I like to read a lot. Wirtz is trying to read more. So it kind of hits both. And one of our goals, if you listen to the Gold podcast, I think I wanted to read 50 books, and Wirtz wanted to read 12. So that helps us get to that ballpark mark. So
yeah. And it's going to be a lot of fun too. Like you said, it's going to be more in the self-development sphere or the training sphere. And this will be kind of a side series for us. We'll still do some more like fitness related podcasts as well, but this will be kind of a fun side piece. We brought this up a few weeks ago, and we both got really excited about the idea of doing something kind of like this. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But until next time, no excuses
and no regrets.
All right. See you later, guys.